empire that ruled thousands of worlds believed fear was the ultimate weapon, until one broken warship returned from Earth carrying something far more dangerous. Not a superweapon, not a virus, a song. What humanity did to the Dominion wasn't invasion, it was awakening.
The first thing the Senate noticed was the smell. Not smoke. Not blood. Not burning circuitry. Cold rain drifting through the shattered breach of docking Ring 7 as the crippled warship tore into the orbital station like a dying animal. Emergency barriers slammed into place too late. Atmosphere screamed into space. Senators, guards, and attendants were thrown from their feet as the ancient cruiser carved a trail of molten metal across the chamber's ceiling before finally grinding to a halt less than 50 meters from the Grand Throne itself. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then someone recognized the ship. The silence of judgment. An execution vessel of the Dominion Navy. One of the deadliest warships ever constructed. 20 kilometers of armor, blackened by 100 conquered worlds. A ship commanded by High Executor Threx Valkair, the man responsible for extinguishing civilizations that had resisted imperial rule. The same ship that had vanished 11 cycles ago after entering the Sol system. A system populated by a species the Senate had dismissed as primitive. A species called humanity. Sirens wailed across the chamber while smoke curled from the ruined cruiser's hull. Armed guardians flooded the platform with pulse rifles raised, expecting invasion, sabotage, assassination, anything except what emerged from the wreckage. One man. Or something barely resembling one. High Executor Threx staggered through the breach wearing torn ceremonial armor stained with dried blood that was not entirely his own. Half his face had been replaced by crude mechanical implants, and deep scars crossed his gray skin like fractures in stone. The chamber fell silent as he walked forward with uneven steps, ignoring the weapons pointed at him. People had once compared Threx to death itself. Now he looked afraid. Not wounded. Not exhausted. Afraid. The Grand Chancellor rose slowly from the throne platform, crystalline robes shimmering beneath the chamber lights. "Executor," he said carefully, "report the status of your fleet." Threx stopped walking. For a moment, nobody answered. The old warlord simply stared upward at the giant holographic star map suspended above the Senate chamber. Thousands of systems glowed beneath Dominion control. Endless worlds. Endless armies. Then his eyes found one tiny yellow star near the edge of known space. His breathing changed. Several senators exchanged uneasy looks as the executor's hands began trembling violently. "Seal the chamber," Threx whispered. The chancellor frowned. "What?" "Seal." His voice cracked hard enough to silence the room. "Seal the chamber now." Something in his tone triggered instinct before logic. Security barriers thundered down around the Senate platform. Automated defense drones activated overhead. Even then, Threx still looked terrified. Finally he spoke. "We were not defeated." Confusion rippled through the chamber. The Dominion's 9th expansion fleet consisted of 400 warships. Entire empires had collapsed before less. Every projection predicted humanity would surrender within hours of first contact. The Chancellor stepped forward. "Then where is your fleet?" Threx closed his eyes. And for the first time in recorded history, a Dominion executor began to cry. Not quietly. Not with dignity. He broke apart standing there before the throne like something inside him had shattered beyond repair. "They stayed," he whispered. Nobody understood. They heard the humans singing, and they stayed. The chamber remained frozen. The executor raised shaking hands toward his face as though trying to hold himself together physically. "You do not understand what they are," he continued. "You think they are another young species clawing toward relevance. You think they fear us because every species fears us." His eyes lifted slowly toward the Senate. "But humans are broken creatures. Their minds are wrong." Murmurs spread immediately. The Chancellor's voice hardened. "Explain yourself." Threx laughed once. It was not a sane sound. "We bombed one of their ocean cities during first contact." His voice grew quieter with every sentence. "We wanted surrender through spectacle. millions died in the flooding. He swallowed hard. The next day, humans used their own civilian ships to rescue our soldiers from a reactor collapse. No one spoke. They carried our wounded out of radiation zones while their own cities burned behind them. The executor's breathing became ragged. One of them gave me water. His eyes unfocused slightly, as if seeing something far away. His daughter had died in the bombardment 6 hours earlier. Silence swallowed the chamber whole. And he gave me water. The Chancellor stared at him with visible disbelief. That is impossible. Yes, Threx whispered. That is exactly what terrified us. A senator near the eastern platform stood abruptly. Executor, where is the 9th Fleet? Threx looked toward him slowly. Listening. The answer sent visible discomfort through the chamber. Listening to what? Another senator demanded. Threx turned back toward the holographic image of Sol. The humans speak about freedom the way believers speak about gods. His voice lowered almost to a whisper. And the longer you hear them, the more impossible obedience becomes. Several security officers tightened their grip on their rifles. The Chancellor descended from the throne platform carefully now, studying the broken warlord with growing unease. You are suggesting ideological contamination? Threx did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the torn remains of his armor and removed a small metallic object. A human music player. Ancient. Primitive. Scratched from overuse. Every guard in the chamber raised their weapons instantly. Threx looked down at the device with an expression no one had ever seen on his face before. Not fear. Longing. Then he pressed play. And somewhere inside the sealed Senate chamber, a soft human voice began singing. The song lasted less than 2 minutes. No one in the chamber understood the language completely. The Dominion translator struggled with several phrases, reducing entire verses into fragmented approximations that appeared in pale text across the Senate airspace. Stand together. Carry the fallen. Hold the line. Come home. Primitive words. Primitive music. A single human voice accompanied by soft instruments that sounded painfully unsophisticated compared to Dominion harmonic orchestras. And yet when the recording ended, nobody spoke. The silence afterward felt unnatural. Several senators looked disturbed without understanding why. One guard near the eastern barricade slowly lowered his rifle as if distracted by a memory he could not fully grasp. Another senator discreetly wiped moisture from beneath one eye before realizing what he was doing. The Chancellor noticed everything. His gaze snapped back toward Executor Threx. What did you do to this chamber? Nothing, Threx replied quietly. That is the problem. The old warlord stood beneath the holographic stars with exhaustion carved into every movement. He no longer looked like a conqueror. He looked like a survivor of something the Senate could not yet imagine. You believe music destabilized an imperial fleet? Counselor Jelt asked sharply from the upper tier. The insectoid noble flexed his blade-like limbs in visible irritation. This is emotional infection. Psychological warfare. Humans are manipulating neural pathways somehow. Threx laughed again, though this time the sound carried no madness. Only despair. That is what we told ourselves in the beginning. A command gesture activated the chamber's tactical display. Instantly the ruined form of the 9th Expansion Fleet appeared above the Senate floor. 400 Dominion warships reduced to scattered markers surrounding Sol system. But the destruction patterns made no sense. The ships had not been annihilated. They had simply stopped fighting. Recorded battle footage flickered into existence. The first clip showed Dominion boarding troops entering a damaged human colony beneath the ice fields of Europa. The settlement was burning. Human civilians ran through smoke while automated defense guns fired wildly overhead. A standard pacification operation. Then the footage changed. A Dominion soldier became trapped beneath collapsing debris after an explosion tore through the corridor. Several humans nearby immediately took cover behind shattered machinery. One of them saw the trapped alien. The soldier prepared to fire. Instead, the human dropped his weapon and ran toward him. What is he doing? A senator whispered. The human ignored incoming fire completely. He lifted a section of burning metal with his bare hands despite severe burns spreading across his arms. Another human joined him. Then another. 3 civilians. Unarmed. Saving an enemy soldier while their own colony collapsed around them. The footage ended abruptly. Nobody moved. Another recording appeared immediately afterward. Dominion Marines escorting captured humans aboard an Imperial cruiser. Standard containment procedures. Nothing unusual until reactor alarms suddenly erupted throughout the ship. A containment breach. Panic spread instantly through the corridor as radiation warnings flashed crimson across every surface. The alien guards abandoned the prisoners first. Every senator nodded slightly at the decision. Rational. Expected. Survival came before sentiment. But the humans did not run. One prisoner grabbed a fallen Dominion officer whose leg had been crushed beneath a security door. Another human ripped apart a ventilation panel while shouting instructions. A third carried a wounded guard through rising radiation while the ship's automated systems screamed evacuation orders. The footage paused on a single frame. A human woman kneeling beside an alien marine while manually sealing his ruptured breathing apparatus with her own hands. The Chancellor frowned. Why would they do this? No one answered immediately. Finally Threx spoke. Because they knew he was afraid. A strange tension spread through the chamber again. It was subtle, difficult to define. The footage itself contained no violence extraordinary enough to justify the unease crawling beneath everyone's skin. Dominion worlds had witnessed slaughter on scales humanity could barely comprehend. But compassion? Compassion directed toward enemies? That felt wrong. Dangerously wrong. Counselor Jelt slammed one bladed limb against the platform. This proves deliberate manipulation. No rational species behaves this way during invasion. Humans do, Threx replied. The Chancellor studied him carefully now. You still have not explained why the Ninth Fleet failed. For the first time, genuine fear crossed the Executor's face. Because they started talking to us. The chamber darkened as another sequence activated. Private communications. Unauthorized transmissions intercepted between Dominion personnel during the Sol campaign. At first they seemed harmless. Conversations about human architecture. Human humor. Human food. Human music. Then the recordings became stranger. One captain admitted he no longer understood why the Dominion executed non-compliant worlds instead of negotiating with them. Another officer questioned why civilian casualties were considered strategically acceptable. A Marine squad abandoned orders after refusing to bombard a human evacuation convoy. Then came the final transmission recovered from the flagship Reverence of Dawn. The recording opened inside a command bridge. Dominion officers stood at their stations while warning sirens echoed through the ship. Yet nobody appeared focused on combat. Several crew members were listening to something through the internal comm systems. Music again. So, human. The fleet admiral himself stood motionless before the viewport staring toward Earth. We can still recover the operation, his second officer insisted nervously. If we begin orbital sterilization now. No. The response stunned the bridge crew. The admiral turned slowly, and the expression on his face sent visible discomfort through the Senate chamber. He looked awake for the first time in his life. We were never bringing order, the admiral whispered. We were bringing fear. The second officer stepped backward. Sir, we burn worlds because we are terrified of freedom. The transmission ended in static. Silence swallowed the Senate. The Chancellor's voice lowered carefully. What happened afterward? Threx answered immediately. The fleet mutinied. More footage appeared. Warships breaking formation. Dominion soldiers lowering weapons. Executions halted mid-command. Entire crews refusing orders while human civilian broadcasts spread uncontrollably across military frequencies. The Senate watched in horrified fascination as the Ninth Expansion Fleet collapsed from within without humanity firing a decisive shot. Not through superior weapons. Not through technological dominance. Through exposure. Finally, the Chancellor understood why Threx looked terrified. Humans were not dangerous because they were stronger than the Dominion. They were dangerous because they made Dominion citizens question why the Dominion existed at all. A quiet voice suddenly echoed from the rear of the chamber. So what happens if this spreads? Everyone turned. Strategist Lyrason stood near the lower archives platform, clutching a data slate tightly against her chest. Young by Dominion standards. Unimportant. Barely permitted to attend Senate sessions. But her face had gone pale. Threx looked directly at her. It already has. Before anyone could respond, emergency alarms exploded across the chamber. Every display in the Senate flashed crimson simultaneously. Unauthorized transmission detected. Source unknown. The holographic stars vanished. Then every screen inside the chamber displayed the same image. Blue oceans, white clouds, and a single line of translated human text. If you can hear this, you are already changing. Panic erupted before the message even disappeared. Security drones flooded the Senate chamber instantly, scanning every communication layer for hidden transmitters while military officers shouted over one another demanding signal origins, sabotage reports, containment protocols. Several senators abandoned their seats entirely. Others demanded immediate planetary quarantine of every system touched by the Ninth Fleet. But strategist Lyrason barely heard any of it. She was staring at the image of Earth frozen across the central display. Blue, fragile, beautiful. The sight disturbed her more than the threat itself. Dominion worlds were engineered for efficiency. Their cities rose in perfect geometric structures beneath climate-controlled skies. Storms were suppressed before formation. Oceans were harvested into regulated sectors. Forests existed only where approved by state design. But Earth looked alive. Uncontrolled. And somehow proud of it. Remove the image, Chancellor Vale ordered sharply. The display went dark. Still, the silence afterward felt contaminated. Executor Threx slowly lifted his eyes toward the Senate tiers. Now you understand, he whispered. They do not conquer territory first. They conquer certainty. Counselor Jelt slammed both bladed limbs against the railing. Enough. His voice trembled with restrained fury. This species is conducting mimetic warfare against the Dominion itself. We should sterilize Sol immediately. We tried intimidation first, Threx replied quietly. That failed. Then we escalate. And if escalation spreads them faster? That sentence stopped the chamber cold. The Chancellor turned slowly toward Threx. Explain. The old executor looked exhausted now, as though every word physically cost him something. Humanity does not spread through force alone. Conflict amplifies them. The more suffering they experience, the stronger their influence becomes. Several senators scoffed openly. But Lyra did not. Because she had spent the last several minutes reviewing the unauthorized transmission logs. The signal that breached the Senate chamber had not originated from Earth. It came from inside Dominion territory. Deep inside. Her stomach tightened. Chancellor, she interrupted carefully, the source was relayed through 6 internal military networks. The room fell silent again. Counselor Jelt turned sharply. Impossible. Lyra transferred the data to the central display. The signal piggybacked through Dominion communication relays voluntarily opened from within our own systems. Someone allowed it access. A low murmur spread immediately. Not infiltration. Cooperation. The distinction terrified everyone. The Chancellor's expression hardened. Identify the relay officers. Lyra hesitated. They are already dead. That changed the room instantly. Executed, someone asked. No, Lyra replied softly. Suicide. Another silence followed, heavier than before. Threx closed his eyes as though he had expected exactly that. They heard too much. Counselor Jelt snarled in frustration. Enough riddles. Humans are biological organisms, not gods. Explain what they are doing. Threx opened his mouth and stopped. A strange expression crossed his face suddenly. Not fear this time. Recognition. His gaze drifted toward one of the security guards standing near the eastern barricade. The young officer had slowly lowered his rifle again without realizing it. Threx noticed the movement immediately. "So soon," he whispered. The guard blinked in confusion. "Executor?" Threx stared directly at him. "Do you have offspring?" The question startled everyone. "Yes," the guard answered cautiously. "How old?" "3 cycles." Threx nodded slowly. "Then it has already begun." The guard stiffened visibly. "What are you talking about?" But Threx looked toward the Chancellor instead. "Ask him what he is thinking right now." Annoyance flashed across the Chancellor's face. "This is not the time for." "Ask him." Something in Threx's tone forced compliance. The Chancellor turned reluctantly toward the guard. "Officer, what are you thinking?" The young guard swallowed. For several seconds he said nothing. Then quietly, "I was wondering if humans protect enemy children during war." The chamber froze. The guard himself looked horrified after speaking. "I do not know why I asked that." Threx's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "Because they would." Nobody spoke. Lyra felt something cold slide down her spine. It was not the question itself that frightened her. It was the instinct behind it. Dominion doctrine eliminated empathy from military conditioning generations ago. Compassion toward enemies reduced efficiency. Attachment weakened obedience. Emotional hesitation cost lives. Every Dominion citizen knew this. Every citizen accepted it. So why had that question emerged naturally? Counselor Jelt immediately signaled security. "Remove the officer for psychological examination." The guard did not resist as drones escorted him away. But before the chamber doors closed, he looked back once toward the holographic image of Sol still glowing faintly in the tactical display. And for the briefest moment, he smiled. Unease spread visibly through the Senate tiers. The Chancellor noticed it too. Fear was moving now. Not panic. Something worse. Curiosity. Without another word, he activated classified clearance protocols around the chamber. Privacy fields sealed instantly. No transmission in or out. "Executor," he said carefully, "tell us everything." Threx stood silently beneath the artificial stars for a long moment. Then he began. It started with prisoners. The lights dimmed automatically as archived footage filled the chamber again. Human detention camps. Except they were not camps. No torture cells. No execution pits. No forced labor compounds. Dominion prisoners were fed before human soldiers ate. Wounded captives received medical care alongside civilians. Human guards spoke to prisoners casually, even respectfully. At first, Dominion intelligence assumed manipulation. Then confusion spread. Because the humans gained nothing from it. No propaganda broadcasts. No ransom demands. No strategic leverage. They simply refused cruelty. "Why?" Lyra asked before she could stop herself. Threx looked toward her. "Because humans believe mercy defines strength." The sentence hit her harder than expected. Not because she agreed. Because part of her desperately wanted to. Another recording began. A Dominion officer speaking privately during captivity. "They asked about my family," he whispered into the camera. "No interrogations. No threats. They just listened." His breathing became uneven. "One human told me she hoped the war ended before more children died." The officer looked directly into the camera then. "I realized I did not know the names of my own workers." The feed ended abruptly. Counselor Jelt snarled. "Emotional corruption." "No," Lyra said quietly before realizing everyone was looking at her. The chamber fell silent. She stared at the frozen screen. "It is perspective corruption," she corrected softly. "Humans are forcing comparison." Nobody answered immediately. Because everyone understood. The danger was not that humans controlled minds. The danger was that Dominion citizens might begin judging the Dominion against humanity. And prefer what they saw. Suddenly alarms erupted across the tactical grid. This time the chamber reacted instantly. Multiple systems flashing yellow across Dominion space. Civil unrest. Military refusal incidents. Unauthorized broadcasts. The reports multiplied by the second. Lyra's eyes widened as translation feeds flooded the display. human songs, human speeches, human poetry, spreading across Dominion military frequencies like wildfire. Then came the final report. A Dominion destroyer stationed near the outer colonies had vanished from formation. Not destroyed. Defected. Its departing transmission contained only one sentence. We want to see Earth for ourselves. And somewhere deep beneath the Senate chamber, hidden behind military encryption and sealed intelligence firewalls, an ancient Dominion surveillance system quietly activated for the first time in centuries. Because something inside the Empire had finally recognized humanity for what it truly was. Not an enemy.
Up to this point, the Dominion still thinks humanity is just another species to contain. But everything is already unraveling. Executor Threats has revealed how human compassion infected the Ninth Fleet. Dominion soldiers are questioning their own orders, and entire systems are beginning to rebel after hearing human music, stories, and broadcasts. Now the terrifying truth is spreading through the empire. Humanity isn't conquering words, it's making people remember what freedom feels like. And what happens next will force the Dominion to choose between preserving its control or burning the galaxy to keep it.
A catalyst. The emergency session lasted 19 continuous hours. By the end of it, the Dominion Senate no longer debated whether humanity represented a threat. The debate had become whether the Dominion itself could survive contact with them. Across Imperial space, the fractures were spreading faster than military intelligence could suppress them. Entire communication sectors were being flooded with unauthorized human media. Source. Interviews. Images of ordinary human civilians risking their lives for strangers during disasters, wars, and famines. The material itself appeared harmless to outside observers. That was what terrified the Senate most. There were no calls for conquest, no recruitment propaganda, no demands for rebellion. Humans simply showed each other caring. And somehow that was enough to destabilize worlds. 27 labor colonies have entered strike paralysis, strategist Lyra reported from the central platform while fresh data streamed across the chamber. 3 military detachments refused civilian suppression orders within the last cycle. 2 planetary governors have requested temporary autonomy from Dominion oversight. Counselor Jelt's blades twitched violently. Over emotional contamination? Over comparison, Lyra corrected again, though more carefully this time. Citizens exposed to human transmissions are questioning why Dominion populations live under permanent fear conditioning. The Chancellor rose slowly from the throne platform. Fear preserves order. Yes, Lyra answered quietly, but humans appear to preserve order without it. The chamber fell silent. That possibility alone felt more dangerous than any weapon. Executor Threx stood near the rear observation deck watching the tactical displays with hollow eyes. The old warlord had stopped trying to convince the Senate humanity was extraordinary. The evidence was doing that for him now. The Dominion had conquered thousands of civilizations over its history. But no civilization had ever infected the Empire merely by existing. Cut all external civilian communication with Sol, the Chancellor ordered suddenly. Sever every unauthorized transmission channel. Anyone redistributing human media will be detained for ideological examination. It will not stop them, Threx warned. It will slow them. No, Threx replied softly. It will prove them right. The Chancellor ignored him. Military directives flooded outward immediately. Entire sectors darkened beneath communication blackouts while censorship divisions deployed across the Empire at emergency speed. Human broadcasts vanished from public networks within hours. And that was when the riots began. Not massive uprisings. Not yet. Something smaller. More personal. Workers refusing to report to weapons factories after hearing recordings of human rescue crews saving enemy civilians during bombardments. Dominion medics demanding equal treatment for prisoners after seeing human battlefield footage. Soldiers questioning execution quotas during pacification campaigns. Questions. Always questions. The Dominion had been built on obedience so absolute that most citizens no longer remembered how to challenge authority. Humanity was teaching them accidentally. Or perhaps intentionally. No one knew which possibility was worse. Meanwhile, deep within Sol System, Earth watched the Empire panic. The United Earth Assembly bunker beneath Geneva vibrated faintly as orbital defense cannons rotated overhead. Massive holographic displays showed the expanding unrest spreading through Dominion territory while military analysts argued across the command floor. General Naomi Reyes stood at the center of it all with her arms crossed tightly behind her back. Status of the censorship response? Escalating globally across their systems, an intelligence officer answered. Mass detentions already confirmed. Another screen lit up. Dominion riot footage. Citizens clashing with military security in the streets of a colony world nearly 9,000 light-years away from Earth. All because someone played human music publicly. Naomi watched the chaos silently. Then finally, they're collapsing faster than projected. No one sounded relieved. Because this was never the plan. Humanity had prepared for invasion for decades after discovering the ruins beneath Mars. They had expected extermination fleets, orbital bombardments, ground wars. Nobody expected ideological chain reactions. A communications specialist turned sharply toward Naomi. "Ma'am, there's another defector request." "How many now?" 31 military vessels asking asylum clearance. Murmurs spread across the command center. 31. An entire Dominion assault wing. Naomi exhaled slowly. "What are they asking for?" The officer hesitated strangely. "Permission to live near humans." That sentence changed the room. Several military officials exchanged deeply uneasy looks. Humanity was becoming more than a military threat now. It was becoming an idea. An idea spread. Naomi walked toward the central tactical display where the Dominion star map glowed beneath layers of conflict markers. Riots. Military fractures. Communication collapses. Economic instability. Humanity had not fired a shot in weeks. Yet the Empire was bleeding anyway. "General," another analyst interrupted nervously, "we intercepted high-priority Dominion military traffic." The room quieted instantly. The analyst swallowed once before continuing. "They're mobilizing annihilation fleets." The atmosphere changed immediately. Every screen shifted to emergency projections as intelligence streams updated in real time. Dominion shipyards across multiple sectors were activating reserve war protocols. Planetary siege carriers were leaving dockyards for the first time in centuries. Long-range sterilization weapons previously banned under internal treaties were being armed. Naomi stared at the numbers. "They're not preparing occupation forces," she realized quietly. "No, ma'am." A cold silence spread across the bunker. The Dominion was no longer trying to conquer Earth. It was preparing to erase it. Thousands of warships. Planet-killer payloads. Stellar ignition weapons capable of destabilizing entire systems. The Empire had reached the same conclusion Threx reached months earlier. Humanity could not be controlled. Therefore humanity had to die. A younger officer broke the silence first. "Then we hit them before they arrive." Several commanders immediately agreed. But Naomi remained motionless. Because another realization had just formed. If the Dominion launched extermination war publicly, the rebellions would multiply. Every oppressed species in the Empire would see exactly what humanity had been trying to warn them about. The Dominion could still destroy Earth. But in doing so, it might destroy itself too. "General," someone pressed carefully. Naomi looked back toward the tactical map. Millions of lives balanced on decisions no species had ever faced before. Then quietly, "Prepare emergency broadcast authorization." The room froze. A senior diplomat turned sharply. "To who?" Naomi's eyes remained fixed on the stars. "Everyone." Hours later, every communication network inside Dominion territory suddenly activated simultaneously. Not hacked. Not forced. Opened voluntarily by unknown internal sources. The Chancellor himself watched in horror as every public screen across the Empire displayed the same human transmission. No military threats. No propaganda banners. Only a woman standing beneath rainfall outside a ruined coastal city on Earth. Behind her, Human civilians rebuilt shattered homes by hand. The woman looked directly into the camera. "You were told empathy makes you weak," she said softly. "You were told compassion destroys civilizations." She glanced toward the ruined city behind her. "But this city was destroyed during your first attack on Earth." Her eyes returned to the camera. "And we still chose to help your wounded." Silence. Rainfall echoed faintly through the transmission. Then her voice hardened. "If your rulers fear kindness this much," she said, "ask yourselves why." The broadcast cut instantly. Across the empire, millions of Dominion citizens stared at darkened screens in absolute silence. And deep inside the Senate chamber, Chancellor Vale slowly realized something horrifying. Humanity was not trying to destroy the Dominion. Humanity was trying to wake it up. Then the military alert arrived. The first Annihilation Fleet had entered faster-than-light formation toward Sol. The Dominion called it Final Sanction, a military designation so old that most citizens believed it was mythology. Entire fleets built for one purpose only: extinction. Not conquest. Not occupation. Not deterrence. Erasure. For the first time in 600 years, the sealed vaults beneath the Dominion core worlds opened, and the galaxy watched in terrified fascination as the ancient fleets emerged from darkness. Titan black warships kilometers wide drifted from hidden shipyards beneath frozen moons. Planetary execution platforms unfolded like mechanical gods awakening from hibernation. Stellar rupture carriers capable of igniting suns moved into formation surrounded by escort wings large enough to blockade civilizations. Even before they reached Sol, the message was clear. The Dominion would rather burn the stars than let humanity continue spreading. And yet the fear inside the Empire no longer pointed only toward Earth. It pointed inward. Because everywhere the fleets traveled, citizens gathered to watch them pass in silence. Not cheering. Not celebrating. Watching. Questioning. Strategist Lyra Sen stood alone inside Observation Spire 9 overlooking the capital shipyards while endless military formations assembled beneath her. Hundreds of vessels moved through the void in perfect synchronized motion, but for the first time in her life the precision no longer impressed her. It unsettled her. She remembered human cities now when she looked at Dominion architecture. Human chaos. Human unpredictability. Human laughter in the middle of disaster footage. The contrast had become impossible to ignore. A quiet voice interrupted her thoughts. "You have started comparing us too." Lyra turned sharply. Executor Threx stood near the doorway wrapped in dark ceremonial robes, his scarred face half hidden beneath the chamber shadows. "You should not be here," she said automatically. "Neither should you." He walked beside her slowly, both of them staring toward the growing fleets below. "They are really going to do it?" Lyra whispered. "Yes. Even if it destroys the Empire?" Threx looked toward her carefully. "They believe the Empire already dies if humanity survives." That sentence lingered heavily between them, because part of Lyra understood the logic now. Not politically. Emotionally. Humanity had introduced something catastrophic into Dominion society: alternatives. Before Earth, the Empire's citizens believed suffering was necessary. Obedience was survival. Fear was stability. Humans lived differently. And once seen, that truth could not be unseen. Alarms suddenly pulsed across the observation tower. Both turned instantly toward the tactical displays. Unauthorized fleet movements. Multiple sectors. At first Lyra assumed more rebellions. Then the data finished updating. And her blood went cold. Dominion fleets were turning around. Entire battle groups assigned to Final Sanction had suddenly broken formation and gone silent. Communication requests flooded command channels. Officers refused firing authorization. Some ships powered down weapons entirely. Others did something far worse. They defected publicly. The first declaration came from the carrier Dawn of Mercy, broadcast across every military frequency in the sector. "We will not exterminate civilians to preserve political control." A second fleet joined moments later. Then a third. Chaos detonated across military command structures instantly. The Chancellor's emergency orders flooded every channel demanding arrests, executions, reactivation of obedience conditioning. But the responses came slower each hour. Because soldiers were talking now. Actually talking. About morality. About fear. About choice. Human concepts. The Dominion military had spent centuries removing emotional hesitation from warfare. Humanity had somehow put it back. Lyra stared at the collapsing tactical formations in disbelief. This should not be possible. Threx answered quietly. It was always possible. They simply forgot. Across the galaxy, the fractures spread violently. Workers sabotaged weapons factories preparing extermination payloads. Entire planetary defense systems refused civilian suppression commands. Prison worlds erupted into open revolt after guards abandoned execution orders mid-cycle. And Earth had not even attacked. That was the terrifying part. Humanity was winning by surviving visibly. Inside the Geneva Assembly bunker, General Naomi Reyes watched the same reports arrive with growing unease. Around her, human commanders celebrated Dominion collapse projections while military analysts predicted mass surrender scenarios within months. Naomi did not celebrate, because another pattern was emerging beneath the chaos. Track emotional instability spikes, she ordered quietly. Several analysts frowned. Then the data appeared. Suicide rates. Psychological breakdowns. Violent civilian incidents across Dominion space. Billions of citizens exposed to emotions they had spent generations suppressing were beginning to fracture psychologically. Some adapted. Others collapsed completely. Humanity had accidentally detonated an emotional awakening across an entire civilization. And civilizations were not designed to transform this quickly. We're hurting them, one advisor whispered uneasily. Naomi stared at the numbers. Yes, she admitted softly. But not the way they hurt us. That distinction mattered. At least she hoped it did. Then another transmission arrived. Priority Omega. Origin, Dominion Core. Naomi opened it immediately. The image that appeared shocked the entire command center into silence. The Dominion Chancellor himself stood before the camera. Alone. No ceremonial armor. No political banners. No military escorts. For the first time, the ruler of the galaxy looked tired. I speak now not as Chancellor, he said slowly, but as a survivor of what humanity has done to us. Naomi narrowed her eyes carefully. The Chancellor continued. When humans entered our history, they infected us with memory. Confusion spread through the bunker. The Chancellor's expression tightened. We forgot long ago why the Dominion was created. Our ancestors removed empathy during the Cataclysm Wars because compassion nearly destroyed our species through endless internal conflict. We believed emotional suppression was salvation. His eyes lowered briefly. Humanity reminded us what we sacrificed to survive. The room remained utterly silent. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Your species carries naturally synchronized empathic resonance, the Chancellor said quietly. Your emotional communication affects neural pathways in species genetically altered for suppression. His voice hardened. Simply interacting with you destabilizes the conditioning our civilization was built upon. Several human scientists turned pale instantly. Not propaganda. Not ideology. Biology. Humanity itself was the catalyst. Naomi's pulse slowed. How long have they known? Someone whispered. But the Chancellor answered before anyone asked aloud. The executors discovered the truth after the Ninth Fleet stopped obeying orders. His eyes lifted toward the camera again. Your species does not conquer minds. It restores them. Silence consumed the bunker. Then the Chancellor delivered the final blow. And that is why we cannot allow humanity to survive. The transmission ended instantly. For several seconds nobody moved. Then every emergency alarm in Geneva activated simultaneously. The final sanction fleets had accelerated. Not toward Earth. Toward their own rebelling worlds. Naomi stared at the tactical display in horror as extermination markers appeared across dozens of Dominion systems. They're going to purge their own citizens, an analyst breathed. No one answered. Because they all understood now. The Dominion leadership had made its choice. If empathy could not be controlled, then the galaxy itself would burn with it. The first Dominion world died 12 hours later. Not conquered, not bombarded, silenced. Every transmission from the colony of Vera Prime ended simultaneously at 3:14 Galactic Standard. Surveillance satellites captured only a single blinding flash spreading across the atmosphere before the entire planet vanished beneath expanding oceans of white fire. 38 million civilians disappeared in less than 4 minutes. The footage reached Earth before the shockwave had even cleared the system. Inside the Geneva bunker, nobody spoke while the recording replayed across the command chamber. Entire continents evaporated beneath stellar plasma. Cities dissolved into glowing ash. Orbital stations simply ceased to exist as the atmosphere ignited around them. A child's voice echoed faintly through intercepted emergency frequencies during the final seconds. Then static. General Naomi Reyes shut the recording off herself. Around her, human commanders stared at the tactical displays with expressions ranging from rage to horror to disbelief. "They killed their own people," someone whispered. "No," Naomi replied quietly. "They killed anyone capable of changing." The distinction chilled the room. Because humanity finally understood the real war now. This had never been about territory. The Dominion leadership feared emotional freedom more than extinction itself. Fresh reports flooded inward every minute. 3 more systems under sterilization threat. Mass executions across military sectors refusing final sanction orders. Entire civilian populations fleeing planetary centers after hearing rumors of incoming purge fleets. And beneath all of it, human transmissions spreading faster than ever before. Voices. Source. Every extermination hardened resistance instead of stopping it. Dominion citizens exposed to humanity were no longer merely questioning authority. Now they were fighting it. Across the galaxy, military discipline collapsed in waves. Some fleets mutinied openly. Others fragmented into civil war. Officers executed subordinates for refusing sterilization commands while entire crews turned against command staff moments later. The Dominion was beginning to cannibalize itself. And Earth sat directly at the center of the collapse. "General," Intelligence Officer Malik Chin called sharply from the lower station, "We're detecting movement around Saturn." Naomi turned instantly. The outer system tactical grid illuminated with dozens of stealth signatures emerging from hidden positions within the rings. Human ships. Hundreds of them. Not military registered. Civilian. Converted cargo haulers, mining vessels, industrial transports, all retrofitted with weapons and defensive shielding. A volunteer fleet. Naomi stared in disbelief. "Who authorized this?" "No one," Malik answered quietly. Another transmission arrived immediately afterward. A civilian woman appeared on screen wearing the patched pressure suit of a deep space construction worker. Behind her stood thousands of volunteers preparing ships inside the orbital shipyards around Titan. "We saw Vera Prime," the woman said calmly. "If the Dominion wants extermination, then they can come through us first." Naomi felt something tighten painfully in her chest. "Stand down," she ordered immediately. "This is not your fight." The woman actually smiled. That stopped being true when they started burning worlds. The transmission cut. Around the bunker, silence spread again. Humanity was mobilizing itself now. Not through governments. Through instinct. Millions volunteering for evacuation fleets, medical convoys, resistance logistics, civilian engineering corps. Across Earth and the colonies, ordinary people were preparing for a war most of them would never survive. And somehow that frightened Naomi more than the Dominion fleets. Because she recognized the shift happening. Humanity was no longer reacting to invasion. Humanity was deciding what kind of species it intended to become. Far away in Dominion space, strategist Lyrason watched the Empire unravel from inside Central Command. The command halls once famous for perfect order had become war zones of screaming officers, collapsing chains of command, emergency executions, and conflicting fleet reports. Entire sectors had gone dark after rebellion cells seized communication relays. Others broadcast human music continuously across military channels in open defiance. No one even attempted censorship anymore. It was impossible. Too many citizens wanted to hear it. Lyra moved through the chaos almost numbly until she reached the restricted archives beneath the command citadel. Massive vault doors towered before her, sealed behind genetic authorization protocols abandoned for centuries. Yet now they stood open. Executor Threx waited inside. "You found it," he said quietly. The archive chamber stretched endlessly downward beneath layers of forgotten history. Ancient holographic records flickered weakly across dust-covered platforms. Most had not been accessed in generations. Lyra stepped toward the nearest projection and froze. The beings displayed there looked nothing like modern Dominion citizens. They smiled openly, held one another during ceremonies, created art, played with children. Some recordings even showed public mourning rituals where entire communities gathered to grieve together. Emotion everywhere. Warmth. Connection. Humanity had not infected the Dominion with something alien. Humanity had restored something stolen. "Our ancestors were not born emotionless," Lyra whispered. "No," Threx answered. "The suppression protocols were created after the Cataclysm Wars. Empathy amplified conflict so severely that entire civilizations annihilated themselves emotionally before physically." Lyra stared at the recordings in silence. "But they also lost this," she said softly. "Yes." She looked toward him slowly. "Then why hide it?" Threx's expression darkened. "Because controlled populations build empires." The sentence landed like a blade. Everything suddenly made sense. The obedience, the emotional conditioning, the endless military expansion, the suppression of grief, attachment, compassion. The Dominion had not evolved beyond emotion. Its rulers amputated it. And now humanity had accidentally reopened the wound across an entire galaxy. Emergency alarms detonated overhead. Threx activated the tactical feed instantly. The room darkened beneath flashing crimson projections. Another extermination fleet. But this time the target was not a rebellious colony. It was Earth. Final Sanction Command itself had entered Sol's outer perimeter. Thousands of warships. Planetary rupture weapons. Sunbreaker platforms. Enough firepower to reduce humanity to radioactive dust. Lyra's breath caught. "They're doing it anyway." Threx's voice lowered grimly. "Because if Earth survives, the Dominion does not." Meanwhile, inside Sol System, humanity prepared for extinction. Massive defense platforms emerged from beneath lunar craters. Asteroid belts ignited with hidden weapon arrays. Civilian fleets evacuated millions toward deep space shelters while every military vessel Earth possessed moved into defensive formation around the inner planets. But beneath the movement, another operation unfolded quietly. Something hidden. Naomi Reyes stood alone inside sublevel Black beneath Geneva watching quantum synchronization models cascade across the central display. Around her, human scientists argued desperately over neural resonance projections while civilian casualty estimates climbed into catastrophic ranges. "We still do not know what full-spectrum activation will do," one scientist warned. "The emotional restoration effect scales unpredictably across Dominion neurochemistry." Another shook his head violently. "If we amplify the resonance network across their systems all at once, billions could psychologically destabilize simultaneously." "But if we don't," Naomi whispered, "Earth burns." Silence answered her. Because humanity had discovered something terrifying. The empathic synchronization effect could be amplified intentionally. Broadcasted. Forced across the entire Dominion. Not a weapon. Something stranger. A galaxy-wide emotional awakening. And humanity now faced an impossible decision. Use it, and potentially collapse galactic civilization forever, or refuse, and watch the Dominion exterminate every world capable of change. Above them, Sol's defense fleets accelerated toward incoming annihilation forces while emergency sirens echoed across Earth's cities. And deep inside Dominion command space, Chancellor Vale issued the final order history would remember him for.
The war has transformed into something something far bigger than survival. Chancellor Vale has chosen extermination over change. Final sanction fleets are moving toward Earth, and billions across the Dominion are collapsing under emotions they were conditioned to suppress for centuries. Meanwhile, humanity has discovered the horrifying truth behind their influence. They aren't spreading propaganda, they are biologically restoring empathy itself. Now, Naomi Reyes faces an impossible decision: activate the resonance array and risk shattering galactic civilization forever, or do nothing and watch every world capable of hope burn.
If the galaxy must choose between humanity and order, he declared, then let the galaxy burn. The countdown to extinction began at dawn over Earth. From orbit, the planet looked peaceful. Cloud systems drifted across blue oceans while sunlight spilled across continents already preparing for war. Millions of civilians crowded evacuation shelters beneath mountains and oceans. Defense batteries rotated silently toward the outer system. Emergency broadcasts echoed through every city on Earth, Mars, Titan, Luna. And above all of it, the Dominion annihilation fleets advanced like a moving wall of darkness between the stars. General Naomi Reyes stood inside Orbital Command watching the tactical display update in real time. Thousands of enemy vessels, planetary sterilization platforms, stellar rupture carriers positioning themselves around the edge of the solar system with slow, terrifying precision. They were not preparing for battle. They were preparing an execution. No military strategist inside the command chamber pretended humanity could survive a full final sanction barrage. Earth's defenses were strong enough to bloody the Dominion. Strong enough to scar them forever. Not strong enough to stop extinction. Yet no one suggested surrender anymore. Because everyone understood now what surrender meant. The destruction of every species capable of emotional freedom. A communications officer suddenly looked up sharply. General, incoming transmission from Dominion Corps. Naomi accepted immediately. Chancellor Vale appeared on screen once again, but this time he looked older somehow. Exhaustion hollowed his features while distant alarms echoed faintly behind him. Entire sections of the Dominion capital were visibly dark through the windows beyond his chamber. The Empire was dying even before the war ended. You still have time, Naomi said before he could speak. Vale gave a tired smile. No. We lost time the moment humanity taught our citizens to ask why they obeyed us. For a moment neither leader spoke. Two civilizations balanced between annihilation and transformation. Then Vale continued quietly. You think compassion saves people because your species evolved with emotional resilience. Ours did not. His eyes darkened. When unrestricted empathy existed naturally among our ancestors, we nearly exterminated ourselves through grief, vengeance, attachment, and ideological fracture. Naomi crossed her arms slowly. So you amputated part of yourselves. We survived. No, she answered softly. You endured. The Chancellor looked away briefly. And that hesitation frightened Naomi more than anger would have. Because part of him already knew she was right. Your species spreads emotional synchronization instinctively, Vale said. The restoration effect compounds through social exposure, vocal cadence, cooperative behavior, even visual empathy patterns. His voice tightened. You awaken what we buried. Naomi said nothing, because humanity had finally confirmed the same truth hours earlier. Human beings communicated emotionally in ways no Dominion suppression system could fully resist. Tone, expression, shared grief, shared hope. Human neurological patterns reinforced emotional resonance naturally among nearby species. The effect spread strongest during suffering, which meant every atrocity committed by the Dominion only accelerated humanity's influence further. The Chancellor exhaled slowly. You have no idea what will happen if you activate the network. A silence settled over the command chamber. Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly. So he knew. Of course he knew. The Dominion had discovered humanity's amplification project long before Earth completed it. The resonance array. thousands of synchronized quantum transmitters hidden across Sol system capable of broadcasting human empathic patterns through Dominion communication infrastructure simultaneously. Not mind control. Something more dangerous. Restoration. If we activate it, Naomi asked quietly, what happens? For the first time since their conversations began, genuine fear crossed Vale's face. Everything changes. The transmission ended abruptly. Around Naomi, the command chamber remained utterly silent, because no one truly understood the consequences. Not even humanity. The resonance array had never been tested at full scale. Early simulations suggested widespread emotional restoration across Dominion populations. But the deeper projections became increasingly unstable. Some models predicted peace. Others predicted total societal collapse. Billions of minds suddenly experiencing suppressed empathy, grief, attachment, guilt, and compassion all at once could shatter entire civilizations psychologically. Humanity might stop the extermination fleets by detonating an emotional supernova across the galaxy. Scientist Elias Mercer stepped forward carefully beside Naomi. General, we're running out of time. The tactical clock glowed overhead. 3 hours until final sanction firing range. 3 hours before Earth died. Naomi looked around the chamber slowly. Military officers, scientists, civilian representatives, ordinary people forced into deciding the fate of civilizations. What happens if we don't activate it? She asked quietly. No one answered immediately. Then Admiral Sophia Okonkwo finally spoke. Earth burns first, she said. Then every rebelling Dominion world burns after us. The room fell silent again, because that future was simpler. Horrific, but simple. Elias activated another projection. Casualty models exploded across the chamber. If the resonance array works, he explained carefully, the emotional suppression architecture across Dominion species could collapse permanently. He hesitated. But the transition shock may trigger mass psychological destabilization. Entire governments could fall overnight. Military structures might disintegrate. Some populations may react violently before adapting. How many dead? Naomi asked. Elias lowered his eyes. Unknown. That was the worst answer possible. Not millions. Not billions. Unknown. Humanity stood one decision away from rewriting galactic civilization blindly. And outside Earth's defenses, the annihilation fleets continued advancing relentlessly toward firing positions. Meanwhile, deep inside Dominion space, strategist Lyra Sen walked through streets filled with panic. The capital world no longer resembled the center of an empire. Citizens crowded public squares demanding answers. Military patrols clashed with protesters carrying human symbols painted onto banners and walls. Emergency sirens echoed constantly overhead while government broadcasts repeated contradictory orders every few minutes. And everywhere, music. Human music drifting through open windows and underground transit systems like something alive. Lyra stopped beside a shattered memorial where civilians gathered around a small holographic projector displaying recordings from Earth. Human firefighters pulling children from collapsed buildings during bombardments. Human doctors treating wounded enemy soldiers. Human civilians singing together during blackouts while orbital strikes burned overhead. An elderly Dominion citizen beside Lyra began crying openly. I do not understand why this hurts, he whispered. Lyra looked at him quietly, because she understood now. It hurt because it was real. And once reality reached people, fear stopped working forever. Suddenly, every public screen across the capital activated simultaneously. Emergency military override. Chancellor Vale appeared across the world. Behind him, the stars of Sol system glowed in tactical red. Citizens of the Dominion, he began heavily, today we stand at the edge of extinction. Humanity has infected our civilization with instability capable of destroying everything our ancestors sacrificed to preserve. Crowds gathered silently across the streets. Vale's expression hardened. But we will survive. We will preserve order, even if every world must burn to achieve it. Lyra felt cold spread through her chest. Because she finally understood something terrifying. The Chancellor truly believed he was saving the galaxy. And that made him infinitely more dangerous. Back in Sol System, the countdown dropped beneath 1 hour. Dominion rupture weapons aligned toward Earth. Human defense fleets accelerated toward impossible odds. Inside the hidden chamber beneath Geneva, Naomi Reyes stood before the resonance array control platform while millions of lives balanced on her decision. One command could stop the extermination. One command could collapse the galaxy. A young communications officer suddenly looked up from her station, eyes wide with shock. "General?" Naomi turned. The officer's voice shook. "We're detecting something inside the Dominion fleets." "What?" The woman swallowed hard. "They're broadcasting human songs to each other." The songs spread through the Annihilation fleets 5 minutes before Earth's destruction. At first, Dominion Command believed it was sabotage. Encrypted military channels began filling with unauthorized human audio. Old Earth recordings. Civilian choir broadcasts. Soldiers singing beside campfires during ancient wars. Mothers humming lullabies over frightened children while storms rattled windows somewhere beneath Earth's atmosphere. Tiny sounds. Fragile sounds. But they moved through the fleets faster than suppression commands could contain them. Because Dominion crews were sharing them willingly. Inside the bridge of the extinction carrier Judgment of Silence, Weapons Officer Tal Vare sat frozen at his station while a human melody drifted softly through the comm system. Around him, crew members stopped working one by one. No orders. No panic. Just listening. Something inside his chest hurt. Not physically. Emotionally. And for the first time in his entire life, he understood the difference. Another crew member lowered her headset slowly. "Why does this feel familiar?" she whispered. Nobody answered. Because across thousands of Dominion ships, billions of suppressed memories were beginning to surface all at once. Not artificial memories. Instincts. The need to protect. To mourn. To love without permission. To choose. Back on Earth, the tactical countdown reached 60 seconds. Inside the resonance array chamber, Naomi Reyes stood motionless before the activation controls while every screen around her displayed incoming annihilation trajectories. One command remained between humanity and extinction. Elias Mercer looked at her desperately. "If we wait any longer, we lose the window." Naomi's hand hovered over the controls. Billions of lives balanced beneath her fingertips. If she activated the array, the emotional restoration wave would spread across every Dominion-linked neural system in existence. Entire civilizations would awaken simultaneously. The galaxy would never be the same again. And humanity had no right to force that choice upon anyone. But the Dominion had already made its choice. Burn the stars. Burn freedom. Burn anyone capable of change. Naomi closed her eyes briefly. Then she remembered Vera Prime. The human refugees singing during blackouts. The Dominion officer crying because he realized he never learned the names of his workers. The alien child who asked if humans protected enemy families during war. Humanity had infected the galaxy with one terrible, unstoppable idea. That people mattered. Her eyes opened. Activate the array. The chamber erupted instantly. Deep beneath Earth, quantum synchronization towers awakened simultaneously beneath mountains, oceans, lunar craters, asteroid stations, hidden colonies scattered throughout Sol System. Thousands of linked transmitters surged alive together, locking onto Dominion communication infrastructure already saturated with human emotional resonance. Then humanity spoke to the galaxy. Not through weapons. Not through threats. Through memory. The wave moved faster than light. Across Dominion space, billions of minds ignited simultaneously. Soldiers preparing planetary exterminations suddenly remembered civilians they had killed decades earlier and collapsed screaming beside their weapon stations. Fleet officers froze mid-command as grief hit them for the first time in their lives like physical impact. Entire cities fell silent while suppressed emotions returned all at once after centuries of enforced absence. Parents embraced children without understanding why they were crying. Workers stopped functioning because they suddenly realized they were exhausted. Prison guards opened containment cells because compassion no longer felt like weakness. And across the annihilation fleets surrounding Earth, weapons systems went dark. Not because they were destroyed, because their crews could no longer bring themselves to fire. Inside the flagship Eternal Dominion, Chancellor Vale watched his empire unravel in real time. Officers throughout the bridge were breaking apart emotionally around him. Some wept openly. Others stared blankly into space as lifetimes of suppressed guilt resurfaced all at once. One weapons commander collapsed to his knees, whispering the names of civilians sterilized during old campaigns. The Chancellor gripped his command platform tightly enough to crack it. Not anger. Despair. Because humanity had done exactly what he feared most. Not conquered the Dominion. Freed it. And freedom was uncontrollable. Sir, a trembling officer whispered nearby. The fleets are refusing fire authorization. Vale stared at Earth glowing peacefully beyond the viewport. A world the Dominion could no longer destroy. Then quietly, stand down. The order spread slowly across the stars. One fleet after another powered down extermination weapons. Soldiers abandoned execution commands. Entire military sectors simply stopped fighting. Not victory. Exhaustion. Relief. Release. Across the galaxy, chaos erupted in waves after the awakening. Some worlds descended temporarily into violence as populations struggled against generations of emotional suppression collapsing overnight. Governments shattered. Old systems died screaming. But other worlds experienced something else entirely. Real peace. Not obedience enforced through fear. The kind humanity had fought and bled and nearly gone extinct protecting since the beginning of its history. Weeks later, the missing Ninth Expansion Fleet finally returned. Not as conquerors. As pilgrims. The surviving ships emerged quietly near Earth carrying Dominion crews who no longer wore military insignias. Their weapons had been dismantled. Their armor repainted with symbols from dozens of species now traveling together freely for the first time. And standing at the front of the lead vessel, stood the fleet admiral long believed lost. His first transmission reached Earth's orbital command beneath complete silence. "We did not disappear," he said softly. "We stayed because humans reminded us what living was supposed to feel like." On Earth, celebrations spread across cities still scarred by war. Human civilians gathered beside former enemies beneath open skies while reconstruction fleets crossed between worlds carrying food, medicine, engineers, artists, teachers. Not armies. The Dominion itself survived, though transformed beyond recognition. Entire sectors declared independence peacefully. Others formed alliances voluntarily for the first time instead of through conquest. The old empire fractured into something uncertain, unstable, but alive. Years later, historians across the galaxy would debate the moment the age of empires truly ended. Some argued it was the failed invasion of Earth. Others believed it was the activation of the resonance array. But among ordinary citizens, the answer remained simpler. The galaxy changed the moment humanity proved strength and compassion could exist together. And somewhere beyond Sol, retired executor Threx Valkair stood beneath an alien sunrise watching children from different species play together freely while distant human music drifted softly through the air. Once, he had feared humanity more than extinction itself. Now he finally understood why. Because humans carried something more dangerous than weapons. And once the galaxy heard it, silence was impossible forever.
In the end, humanity didn't win because it had stronger weapons, bigger fleets, or superior technology. It won because it reminded an entire galaxy what it meant to feel again. The Dominion spent centuries believing fear created stability, but Earth proved something far more powerful. Compassion can survive even in the middle of extinction. Threats feared humans because they carried that one thing no empire can truly control once it spreads, and it's hope. And once even a single civilization remembers freedom, silence can never hold forever.